Starting? Hey, we're live. All right, cool. And we will... Actually, let me say welcome to everybody who's joining us on YouTube. Thank you for joining us again for the recording of our TFA Podcast, our weekly podcast that comes out every single Wednesday, covering us on YouTube. Thank you for joining. Good thing I did that because my sound was on. Covering the week that was and the week to come. Can't wait to get into some week 3 action and look ahead at week 4. We'll be covering our own personal fantasy weeks, who we were affected by, the best of the rest, which is, waiver options that are no longer on waivers. They'd be considered free agents at that point. And then best fantasy matchups of the week going into week 4. Should be a fun show. I'm excited. How you guys doing today? Pumped?
Oh, yeah. Doing good. Sorry, I had to unmute.
Do it.
I'm practicing.
All right.
I'm waiting to hear Kevin's rant.
What's he ranting about?
Look at his face. He's ready. Look at it. Look at the intense.
I don't even know what he's ranting about, but he's ready for it.
His rant face. I know. He waits, and then he drops the bombs. Like, I have a rant. That's it, though. Do it.
All right. Well, let's get into the podcast, and can't wait to hear Kevin's rant. You guys are good. We're going into who hurt you first. Everybody's good with that? Mm-hmm. Kev, I see you don't have anybody there, so I'm assuming that's what your rant is about. No, it's not. Oh, okay. Do you have people to talk about for who hurt you?
No, because I didn't have anybody that hurt me this week. I pretty much dominated every league I was in, so the ones I care about anyway.
Couldn't make one up? All right.
That's
not the point of the segment. You're right. That's not the point of the segment. You're right. Okay. Let's get into it. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Fantasy Authority Podcast, episode number 63. Can't believe we're 63 episodes in already, guys. We are just moving right along, just like this NFL season. Week 3 in the books already. We're going to take a look ahead at week 4 in this podcast, as well as talk about who hurt us, who kicked ass for us, and maybe some of the most interesting storylines of the week. We're also going to get into some free agent additions post waiver wire. This show comes out on Wednesdays, which is after waivers. So if you missed out on your guy on waivers, check out these people who may still be available in your league. And then we're going to wrap it up with the best matchups of week 4 and some sneaky matchups going into week 4. Guys you should target in those matchups, guys you should avoid in those matchups, and some flex options as well. All right, so let's get straight into it. How the heck was your fantasy weekend? Jen, we'll start with you.
Sigh. It was kind of half and half. I actually went in thinking that I was going to win the majority of them, and then Monday Night Football killed my dreams, and particularly Brandon Cooks and Julio Jones. So Cooks only had 2 catches for 13 yards and was basically not around. And then Julio Jones only had 1 catch for 16 yards. So it came down to both those guys. I assumed that they were both going to do well, and then because they didn't, 2 of my paying leagues tanked and I lost. So that was pretty hard to watch, and it cost me. So now I'm down in those leagues and I have to bounce back in week 4. So that was pretty disappointing for me.
It's always the worst, and especially when there's such a high profile matchup on Monday night and you're like, I'm winning this one. I got Julio.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You had Brandon Cooks too, but I mean Julio alone should have won it for you.
Right, and it's going to be a shootout, and that's what's hard is I watched it, and it was a shootout. They just weren't throwing to my guys, or they were just covered. And I should take that back. They tried to throw to Cooks with 8 targets. They tried, but they just didn't connect.
I had Julio as well. He didn't hurt me too much though, because I also had 3/4 of the rest of the offense that was playing Monday night with Kobe Fleener going. I stayed patient, right? And I also had Matt Ryan going and Tevin Coleman. Holy cow! I know you had a struggle there between Ingram and Coleman. Did you end up going with Coleman?
I did. I even did a Twitter poll just kind of, felt it out. And I have, if you read my articles, I've said to Ingram the past 2 weeks, well, week 1, week 2, I was down on Ingram, said he was overvalued. But then week 3, I'm like, he could really do well this week. And so I was going back and forth, and I played Coleman, luckily.
Nice. Yeah, massive points for him. What was he? It was top 3 running back this week, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I tell you who didn't help me out. About Kelvin Benjamin with a goose egg. Anybody else? I know Kev probably doesn't have any shares of Kelvin Benjamin because he didn't even like him before the season, but I was not expecting a goose egg. I can tell you that. I know Minnesota's a tough defense, but Jesus.
I don't have any shares of him, so
no shares.
Luckily that didn't hurt me.
I have one, but that's a team that really kind of relies on him, which is sad. I mean, maybe the roster buildup isn't the best on that team, but I think it's actually the SFB team, to be honest. The goose egg really hurt that. And Spencer Ware didn't really help me out too much either. He still had 75 yards, which is unbelievable to me, but only 1 reception, no scores or anything like that. He ended up with 6 points or somewhere along those lines. So tough week when it came to those two. Hurting me bad.
Speaking of Julio Jones, is there any concern with Julio Jones and only the fact he comes in 51st in the league with only 12 targets? A man who is a target monster. I mean, they seemingly are spreading the ball around everywhere, and the only person that's not getting it is Julio Jones. So, I mean, I know he's been limited some with that injury, with the ankle injury, but he's just not been involved, and the running game has taken off. So, I don't know. There's a little concerning for Julio Jones for this season.
I agree. I mean, they tried to look for him. He got 7 targets, but I don't know if it's the injury. He didn't look like he was in pain. Not that we know pain tolerance level or, could watch him the whole time, but it just did seem like they couldn't connect, that Matt Ryan just couldn't kind of place the ball. I mean, he was targeted in the end zone, and the placement just wasn't on. So the chemistry just wasn't there yesterday, and they were covering. I think they kind of put all their eggs in that basket trying to cover Julio, and everybody else made plays.
The announcers were saying that he typically struggles against the Saints. I don't have the numbers to back up that statement, but I mean, you could tell he had 1 catch for 16 yards. He was continuing to struggle against the Saints. They beat the Saints with everybody else. So I think it was a similar situation last year too, though, right? When they had the running game going with Freeman, Julio definitely started off the season slow last year as well, before kind of bouncing back and having a big year, if I remember correctly. Jeff, how about you, man? How'd your weekend go? Good talk. Can you hear me, Jeff? Can you hear me now?
Sorry, I was having some computer issues.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yep. You were breaking up a little. Say something again.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, I was having some computer issues.
Yeah, you seem to still be a little robot-y, though. We'll come back to you on this. Kev, how about you, man? How was your weekend?
I mean, pretty much how I thought it was going to go. Just pretty much dominated. So, I mean.
I love how modest Kevin is.
Yeah, if his head got any bigger, it wouldn't fit through the door.
His hat wouldn't fit.
Yeah, I mean, really, all those late round value running backs just had some pretty solid production this week. Charles Sims was a beast. Kristen Michael.
Yeah, 2 cuts. What, first minute for Michael?
Heck, I remember on DraftKings. They didn't even because it takes them a couple of minutes to aggregate ownership percentage, and he had already scored a touchdown before that even happened. So, but I mean, he was rock solid, and so I know we'll get to this a little bit later, but Jeremy Hill, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns against that Broncos defense. I mean, I think everybody sat him across the board, and I think a lot of fantasy owners were probably upset on that decision.
Yeah, for sure. I bet that Jimmy Graham call out for Jeff. He's calling him out all week. He's going to have a big game. I actually did put him on my studs. I was listening, Jeff, whenever you get back. I was listening to you. I had Jimmy Graham on his studs. He put up 600 and a touchdown. Good game for him. Good to see him back.
Yeah, it was good to see him. Yeah, it was good to see him bounce back. And I call myself out, and I actually have in my article for undervalued this week. Like I'm on the train a bit, and I completely was not on the train this summer and talked not crap. I was concerned that his injury and he wouldn't bounce back similarly to Victor Cruz, that it took him a while. So it's really good to see him out there and doing well and seemingly no setbacks. So I hope he'll become a weapon for them.
Yeah, it looks like it, right? I mean, it seems like everybody on that team is doing well, sans Lockett, but Jimmy Graham's doing well, Doug Baldwin's doing well, Michael's doing well, Russell Wilson not doing well. So if you're a Russell Wilson owner, you're very frustrated. Somehow the correlation doesn't make sense to me. If your tight end and your receiver are doing well, you would think the quarterback would be doing well too, but he's not. Speaking of tight ends bouncing back, though, how about Kobe Fleener, my boy? Had to have some patience with that one.
I'm still not sold on him, to be honest. I think with Willie Snead out, I think that had more to do with it than anything, to be honest. But I mean, they were really far behind. I mean, he had some pretty bad drops. I don't know, like. I wasn't like blown away with Kobe Fleener last night, you know. Like, I mean, if I was impressed by anybody on from that Monday night game, you know, from the Saints, it's Michael Thomas. But again, you know, Willie Snead will likely be back this week, or you know, so I mean, I don't think any of that's really all that relative, or you know, I don't know. Like, I was more impressed really with the double-headed monster of Tevin Coleman and Devonta Freeman.
Yeah, 296 yards and 4 touchdowns between the two of them. I mean, talk about a tandem.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy.
Kev sure doesn't know how to pee in a guy's Cheerios. Now I'm finally excited about Fleener. You guys still sucked. I mean, I wasn't really that impressed with him. It was terrible.
I probably shouldn't talk then because I don't like Fleener either. He did seem to cut his hair. Did anybody else notice that? Is that a girl thing to notice? I just hated it sticking out of his helmet. But yeah, I'm not impressed with him either. He still dropped it a lot.
Roy Polamalu's hair.
I know, but I just loved him in general. So yeah, you're right. I don't like the hair in general. I don't know my hair down, so I don't understand how they can even deal with it. But
so if anybody was hoping that Golden Tate was going to have sort of a big game, or you know, come out of the shell, you couldn't have been more wrong. How about Marvin Jones, guys? 6 for 205 and 2 touchdowns. Holy crap. I couldn't believe it. I'm looking at other people's scores around my league. I didn't have anybody that was playing against him, and I don't have any shares of him. 35 points in PPR leagues. Like, it's unbelievable.
I have a lot of shares of him. Love him. Talked about him all summer. So glad he's doing well. Clearly their number one wide receiver. I'm really glad to see him succeed. So it's good to watch. He just blew up.
Yeah, I don't think it's surprising at all, though, what he did, considering Green Bay was just without starters all over the place on the defensive side of the ball. So anyone that wasn't even thinking about starting Marvin Jones, like if you were stacked at wide receiver, just the matchup itself should have been like
the push
start at that point.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Shields, Clay Matthews.
Yeah, it was just bad news for the Packers on defense. So,
and then really things settled out nicely because the Packers got up to that big lead early, and so obviously the Lions had to get the running game going, or the passing game going. And to be honest, like the Packers' run defense is right now best in the league. I mean, I think they only allowed 9 points a week to fantasy running backs. So I mean, they just funnel their defense, and I mean the pass. I mean, I think they're really more of a secondary to target. But I am not starting any running back going up against. I mean, unless it's some elite level running back, I'm staying away from that. I don't even want to mess with them. So like Marvin Jones was one of the easiest calls this week. Golden Tate owners. I mean, I don't know. Like, how sad are you? You drafted him in like the 4th or 5th round. And he's just been awful. And Marvin Jones was like a 7th or 8th round pick, and those guys are just laughing their way to the bank. I mean,
we tried to tell him, Kev. We tried.
Yeah,
the value pick.
It's kind of ridiculous that was ever even the case, because even late in the preseason, there was already indications that might happen, and just considering, Golden Tate's basically he's like Jarvis Landry light. Just with catching so many balls at the line of scrimmage. His average depth of target is super weak. I mean, he's not a big guy, and he's not super explosive anyway. So I don't see this as any bit of a surprise. He's not a major red zone threat or anything. He's just a low upside option at this point. He's being out-received by Theo Riddick. I mean, that's saying something.
Indeed. Oh, and we're very sad, Kev. Thank you for pouring salt in the wound yet again. It's great. Most interesting storyline of the week, guys. Only one thing on here, and it's probably because it covers, really the most interesting statement of the week and the most interesting statistic is Trevor Siemian, Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott all finished top 10 in scoring amongst fantasy QBs for week 3. Siemian and Wentz are quarterback ones on the year so far. Dak is just outside at 16th currently in Yahoo, according to the Yahoo standings at least. What do you guys think of these 3 quarterbacks? I mean, can they sustain this? And they're rookies, so they're going to have their games. But which one's most likely to sustain a solid fantasy season and continue to be a QB1 here?
I don't know if I'd count any of them like sustaining it and being a QB1 all year, but I mean, I'll say this with Carson Wentz, like he was kind of a guy that was left for dead by a lot of people. Like a lot of people didn't really believe in his ability. It was the North Dakota State narrative, from him, and that he played at a small school and there's no way he's ever going to produce. And people killed the Eagles for doing what they did to move up to get him, and he's making everybody look really foolish right now, like especially the Rams who took Jared Goff. I mean, I guess some of that's Jeff Fisher, but when I watched Jared Goff in the preseason, like I wasn't impressed. I didn't see anything there that really said to me that he was going to be a legitimate NFL quarterback. And Carson Wentz, I mean, has been completely – his composure is – I mean, that's really been the case with all of these guys, to be honest. Like none of them look like they're rattled. I mean, I believe – I heard this week that Boykin from Seattle, who's a rookie too, he threw an interception, which was the first interception thrown by a rookie quarterback all year. And consider like all the rookies that have started so far, I mean that's pretty impressive. I mean obviously it's only 3 weeks, but that's just surprising. You wouldn't really expect that. But I mean I think Dak Prescott, just again on a week-to-week basis, I mean I think he's starting to show that maybe the Cowboys don't go back with Romo. Because, I mean, the way they're playing right now, I mean, it's hard to deny that. And they haven't even really gotten Des Bryant involved at all into the offense. So, but Carson Wentz is probably the one that I'm probably the most impressed with so far. And, I mean, their defense has been almost elite so far.
Mm-hmm. I agree. That's what I was impressed with because, unfortunately, I had to watch my Steelers get whooped by them this week. But just his calmness, the demeanor at the line, making calls, changing up the plays and calling audibles, and he just seemed in command of that offense and hasn't had an interception yet and blew up for 300 yards. The Steelers' defense clearly isn't high ranked, but I don't want to take anything away from kind of what he's been able to do. They looked good. It looked smooth.
Absolutely. Interesting to mention the Des Bryant thing there, Kev. We talked about Des on Sunday. Mentioned him as a must start, and they're going to get him involved. And again, he just kind of fell off the radar a little bit. We also talked about Aaron Rodgers, people saying that maybe he's not an elite quarterback, and I'm pretty sure he shut some people up this weekend. We hear that talk seemingly all the time whenever he starts off rough or slow or has a bad game. It's like, oh, is Aaron Rodgers an elite quarterback? Well, you can answer that question yourself.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of good, just really quickly along those lines is speaking of good to watch people and how they're doing is Jordy Nelson. And I was high on him, and I really like to see him doing well. 2 touchdowns over 100 yards. So he's bouncing back nice. His knees seem to be doing well, no setbacks. So it was good to see that too.
Yeah, for sure. I don't have any shares of Jordy, I'll be honest. I was very nervous about the knee, but he's looking great so far. So good on you guys who went ahead and got him. All right, guys, so waivers is done. The big names are gone. The Jordan Howards are picked up, fab budgets spent, but there's still some people out there that our listeners should target. So we're going to be giving you guys some people who are owned in 20% or less of leagues at the time of this recording that you should look for to pick up and add to your roster. Whether they be a stash, maybe they're a start right away, look into the future. These are guys that you should really look for to help improve the roster, fill in some holes if you have them. There's been a ton of injuries, so I'm sure you have some holes. And, pretty much the best of the rest. Kev, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I guess. Sure.
Wait, what was your rant about?
You moved on without me.
Well, I can. This is edited. I can move stuff around.
Oh.
But when you don't give me
hear it.
an indication of what the rant is about, I have no idea where it's going to fall in place in the agenda.
I vote rant. That's my vote.
Let me just get it out of the way. Okay.
I'll squeeze it in somewhere. Just go on a rant.
One thing that I've okay. Let me say this. All off season, the entire off season, all we heard the entire off season was about a certain player and how they were going to blow up in their face, and the guy's terrible, the guy's a bum. You can't trust him. Don't touch him. Avoid him. And I just don't get it. Because he's defied all that the entire OTAs, training camp, preseason, and now regular season, and people still just seem to shit on the guy, and I don't get it. And that's Kristen Michael from the Seattle Seahawks. I just don't get it. It's like people will never give the man an opportunity. He's currently through 3 weeks as a 5.2 yard per carry average. He's looked explosive this entire preseason. Yes, it was against the 49ers on Sunday, but he looked fantastic. I honestly, saying this right here, I don't think Thomas Rawls is going to get his job back. I think unless Michael just does something insanely stupid, I think he's the starter for the rest of the year. I think he's earned that role, and I don't see it going away. And it just pisses me off, I guess, that so many fantasy owners love to just shit on players and just never want to see them succeed ever. And it just kills me. And for example, the one thing I saw last couple weeks ago when he did have that fumble at the end of the game that did cost the team, immediately people see, told you guys, told you, and I just don't get it. Can we just let players can we have a feel good moment about a guy? Yeah, he struggled. Yes, and everything else. But people always say, "Oh, he's a terrific athlete, great player, but he's never going to figure it out." Well, now the awakening, if you will, what people have said about him now is happening, and all the people that avoided him and drug him through the dirt and said he's never going to do it, I think they're regretting it now because he continues to produce every week. And so that's all I want to say. It just irritates me that this seems to happen so much when it shouldn't be, because we should be about building these guys up, right? We're playing a game about a game instead of people take this so damn seriously and want to just like I said, run a guy through the mud and will never give him an opportunity.
Well said. Well said.
Absolutely. I think we may have had some poor words for him last year, though, when he was on the Cowboys, if you remember that. But that's kind of to your point, though. He has come back. He's kind of revitalized his career a bit, and now he's just he's taken off. But people out there will still kind of revert back to, he played for 3 teams, and he was terrible, and blah, 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 blah. Maybe they're just afraid of change, Kev.
Well, he clearly used it for motivation and to learn and to come back and, stronger and prove them all wrong. So more power to him.
He finally put his mixtape career behind him and is focusing on football. So
remember joking about that this offseason? Oh, man.
It's so inspiring.
The mixtape is gone.
Jeff, can I just ask, when are you getting your C-Mike jersey? Can you get – is that coming? Is that coming down the pipe?
You know what's crazy, man, is that he's a free agent after this year. So what happens there? That's going to be the big question.
I think if you're the Seahawks, if he continues producing like this, you have to re-sign him.
Yeah, I mean, what if Rawls, Rawls is going to be out for the next few weeks and 4 to 6 weeks or whatever it is, and then, if he runs away with the job when Rawls comes back, and what happens when he puts up 1,300 yards, double-digit touchdowns? But that he's going to be asking for some money.
He has not made the top 25 overall jerseys just yet. You know who is number 5? Carson Wentz. So he hasn't made it just yet, but it's coming.
Give it time. He'll get there. Hey, at one point in time, Christine Michael was an afterthought, right? Wasn't being picked up on any waiver wires. You probably could have got him as a free agent even earlier this season. So why don't we get into some more guys just like that? We're going to get into the best of the rest, players who will likely not be picked up or have not been picked up in your waiver process this week and are actually pretty decent options to add to your roster or maybe stash for a later date. Kev, since you just led us into such a beautiful rant about Christine Michael, how about you lead us off with the best of the rest as well?
Yeah. Okay. So heading into as we talk about the offseason and heading into this season, the Indianapolis Colts and their tight end situation. A lot of people really really love Dwayne Allen, and Dwayne Allen's been he's been okay so far, but I don't think anybody saw Jack Doyle coming. And so far, he appears to have a real chemistry with Andrew Luck. I mean, he's out targeted so far through 3 weeks. He's out targeted Dwayne Allen. He has 15 targets, 137 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And I think currently right now he's the number 3 overall tight end, I believe, somewhere in that range.
He's an 11. He's number 11 overall.
Okay. Sorry. No, I had it filtered to just 2 weeks. All right. So let me start over. So currently he's tight end 1 right now, and I don't know. Like, I think you have to. I think he's somebody certainly to pick up. We've talked about just. Wait a second. No, on Pro Football Focus. On Pro Football Focus, he's number 3 overall.
I just looked on Fantasy Pros after 3 weeks.
I'm looking. Jack Doyle's number 3 overall. Tied with Travis Kelce with 26 fantasy points.
In total fantasy points for tight ends?
Yeah.
That's standard.
Right,
yeah, I have number 4 on Yahoo and PPR. So.
Yeah, number 5 according to Fantasy Pros. See, you threw me off. I thought I was right.
You should be thrown off I'm thrown off because you stole my guy.
Oh, you had him?
Yeah, look at the dang podcast notes. Isn't that the point? I don't know what we're doing here.
Looked at these notes yet.
So yeah, I'm now scrambling. So
where's Jack Doyle? I see Adam Humphries, Jameson Crowder, Cole Beasley.
Cole Beasley, Cap, and Jack Doyle. They're in the same line.
And with an asterisk next to Doyle.
Oh, go ahead and take them. Let's start over then. Let's just start over. Things already screwed up anyway.
Let's go.
No,
I'm trying to figure out why Fantasy Pros Online has him as 11. I mean, I could screenshot this. It's so weird.
I don't understand. You want to start with Jen?
Yeah, go ahead. Jen, you have it. You take it.
Oh, I have just week 3. I have just week 3. That's what it was. Fucking.
All right, Jen, let me know when you're ready, and I'll intro you in.
No, you can go. I have all of it right here.
Okay.
He's number 3 overall? Is that what we found? I don't know. Mine's refreshing.
3 overall, yeah. All right.
Okay.
Since Kev just gave us that beautiful rant about Christine Michael, I was planning on leading with him into the best of the rest, but how about we go with you, Jen? Who do you got in your best of the rest here?
Well, my guy is owned in 11% of Yahoo leagues, and he's somebody that I think people are surprised by his usage because we all thought Dwayne Allen in Indianapolis was going to be, after Fleener left, we thought he was going to step up and be the tight end 1 and kind of Luck's reliable guy. So far, it's been Jack Doyle. He had 2 touchdowns in week 1. Every week, he's gone up in target. So 4 the first week, 5 the second week, 6 this past week. He's overall number 3 fantasy tight end right now, and he's second in red zone targets on the Colts. So for me, 11%, especially when we have people streaming tight ends and going from week to week trying to find somebody, he could be someone that you could keep and play on a weekly basis, and he can get you consistent production if it stays and his usage stays the way that it is. So he's the guy that I would snag.
Love that pick right there. Had him starting this weekend. I think in the SFB, actually, because I had Ladarius Green and, 2 other scrubs, Austin Hooper and Jermaine Gresham. That was my I don't know what I was doing.
Did you pick him up, Doyle, like in the draft, or did you pick him up off the
No, I picked him up.
Waivers? How much you pay for him?
$1.
Nice. Nice. No, because it was a bloodbath. I mean, people were betting all over for the big guys, and I didn't get anybody and went back in. So.
I'm a discount shopper for these free agents here. I always go for the best of the rest.
More power to you.
Always aiming for the best. All right. Jack Doyle, great option there if you need a tight end. Why stream when you have Jack Doyle just putting up points on a weekly basis, getting it done for his quarterback, Andrew Luck?
And I think the thing, just one more note on Jack Doyle, like when you look at the situation that they're currently in right now, with Dante Moncrief out, they're like, can you name who's playing behind Dorsett and Hilton? Probably not. Most people probably can't. So they're going to be running a ton of 2 tight end sets, which Doyle played over 60% of the snaps this past week. Dwayne Allen at 79, so they're both going to be involved. I just think it's kind of going to be a who's going to get the TD if they do go that one of them gets it. So could be a headache going forward, which really sucks for Dwayne Allen because I have him all over the place. But yeah, they both may have usable weeks.
They've recreated that Dwayne Allen, Kobe Fleener dynamic. They just couldn't get enough of having one guy get all the targets there at tight end. Jeff, you have an interesting name here at wide receiver, a guy we've kind of mentioned before here on the podcast. We're all pretty big fans of him. Who do you got here?
Jamison Crowder. It's kind of ridiculous that he's only owned in 17% of leagues in Yahoo and only 11% in ESPN. But right now he's the wide receiver 26 in standard, 24 in PPR. And he's leading Washington in targets right now, 25 on the year, tied with Jordan Reed. So he's extremely involved, as involved as Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon. All 3 of them are at 70% plus snaps right now. So he's, for the time being, as long as Josh Doxson isn't healthy, you're going to see Jamison Crowder in the mix and getting a significant amount of snaps. So for me, he's someone that is really under the radar as a decent flex option at the wide receiver position, especially considering that he's tied for the most red zone targets in the NFL right now with Jordy Nelson at 8, which is really crazy to think about. He's not really converting on much of those because Kirk Cousins has been absolutely horrendous in the red zone so far. But if he turns that around and he's still that involved, I don't think we'll see him continue to be targeted that much in the red zone, considering who else they have there. But the fact that he's this involved, he's someone that at that percentage right there, there's a lot of guys I'd rather own him. I'd rather own him over.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I think it's surprising that he's still this under-owned right now, as considering, I mean, the targets have been there and everything else, and like their rushing attack has not gotten going again this year, which is what caused last year the huge spike in the offensive production last year for Kirk Cousins and the offense as a whole. And I don't think that's changing. Their rushing attack again is dead in the water. That they're going to have to continue to lean on the pass. And Jamison Crowder has been better than advertised so far this year, and just people aren't taking notice. And I think they need to start because I feel like he really is a guy who could end up being, a useful wide receiver 3 or 4 in PPR leagues right now. So he certainly should be picked up. And I mean, I think he's kind of a sneaky guy this week who, in PPR leagues, fantasy owners probably who have a fourth or fifth or sixth or whatever in the waiver priority may be able to grab him, and I would feel fantastic about being able to add him. And that, which leads me straight to my guy that I have. We have a tight end, a wide receiver, so I guess I'll go running back, and that's Kenneth Dixon. Kenneth Dixon right now, the Baltimore backfield right now has been awful. I mean, I don't even know what else to say. I can't believe they're still trying to give these guys opportunity. Both of them have Terrence West so far, 33 carries, 31 for Forsett. And it's like they're just fighting it out for mediocrity right now. The one has 3.6 yard per carry average. The other has a 3.2 yard per carry average. No touchdowns. Neither one of them are doing anything through the air. So for me, Kenneth Dixon right now, and he may be back this week. He missed the first part of the year because of the MCL surgery that he had. And there's reports out there right now that he could be back this week. And if that happens, he's only owned in 17% of leagues. And, I mean, he could be one of those, like we talk about lottery tickets at running back because nobody's doing anything for that offense. And in terms of the rushing attack, which has led to the Ravens right now to just absolutely – I mean, I don't think he's had Joe Flacco's had under 35 attempts so far this year. And so Kenneth Dixon for me is a guy that I would – if I had like the second or third waiver priority this week, I'd probably take Kenneth Dixon.
Ah, man, I love Kenneth Dixon. I love Jamison Crowder, too. Those are really solid options right there. Jamison Crowder, I can't believe it. Good stats there, Jeff, as always, with the stat call out there. 25 targets, only owned an 18% on Yahoo I was just looking at. That's just insane. He's actually a free agent in a few of my leagues. I was just looking like, hey, is he available?
Yeah, and I just looked really quick. He's 28th overall standard scoring wide receiver and 24 PPR. So he's like a top 30 wide receiver right now, and he's not owned in hardly any of the leagues. It's kind of nuts.
Unbelievable. And how about Kenneth Dixon? I mean, if you have running back injuries, you need some running back help. This dude, there's no competition there. Like Kev mentioned, but what have Forsett and West done to hold on to that job? Absolutely nothing. I'm going to go.
What happened?
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I think people just took one look at that backfield and didn't want to mess with it, and they don't want to dig deeper, and that's why Dixon, I think, is still out there because they just don't want to deal with it. But if you see the talent and that he's going to rise up and maybe take over, then you can snag him. So I think that's what people have done is kind of thrown it out and not wanted a part of it. And now you can capitalize on it, so that's a good thing.
And so, I mean, real quick, what has Buck Allen done to John Harbaugh to not get at least one opportunity at all to prove anything? Because like I said, like both of them have been awful. Forsett and Terrence West are just awful. And I have no idea why Buck Allen continues to not get any sort of opportunity whatsoever.
He was a healthy scratch, right?
Yeah, he's been one every week. Yeah. I don't get it. Like, what are we not? Are they seeing something we're not? Did Kenneth Dixon did Buck Allen like sleep with John Harbaugh's daughter or something, or did something happen that we just don't know about?
That's got to be it.
I don't even know if John Harbaugh has a daughter. I'm just saying,
I think that we should continue to bring that subject up on this podcast until the Ravens do something about it. Because Buck Allen, we want to see some Buck Allen. We were talking about him in the preseason. We liked him. He looked good. Healthy scratch. 3 weeks in a row. They only activate 2 running backs. West and Forsett.
If I was a Ravens fan right now, I would be upset right now with that. I mean, I just don't get it, but
Well, they're 3-0. Can you really be that upset?
I know, right? But hey, who have they? What, the Jaguars? They barely beat them. What are the 2 teams that they?
I don't know. We'll have to look it up and get back to you. I'm going to actually go a little bit deeper. Only 1% owned in Yahoo leagues as of right now. I'm sure he'll be picked up quite a bit from those who, kind of sort by, hey, who scored the most points last week? I want that guy. That's Adam Humphries, wide receiver out of Tampa Bay. Seems to be gaining quite a favor with Jameis Winston there. It's been targeted more and more each week. Started 5 targets in week 1, 8 in week 2, and then a whopping 12 this past week. And converting on quite a few. Converted on 3 of 5 for 34, 6 of 8 for 67, and 9 of 12 for 100 yards this past weekend. He looked good out there, too. I mean, I don't know how much of that game you guys got to see. They had it on Red Zone quite a bit. He is a shifty little wide receiver there.
And I agree. I certainly, 18 for 24, 201 yards so far. He doesn't have any touchdowns, but I don't want to steal your thunder here real quick, but can we just talk about Vincent Jackson for a second? I mean, he's Roddy White this year, right? Like, he's Roddy White of last year. Pretty much that's what he is right now.
Looks like it.
Mm-hmm.
9 catches on 20 targets for 99 yards. That's like Devonta Adams' efficiency right there.
Devonta Adams. That dude will never live that down on this podcast, let me tell you. That's crazy. Yeah. So there you guys have it. That's the best of the rest. Guys who are not likely to be picked up during your waivers this week, or guys that were not likely to have been picked up during your waivers this week and should be great additions to your team. We have Adam Humphries, the wide receiver from Tampa, Jamison Crowder, the wide receiver from Washington, Jack Doyle, the tight end in Indianapolis, and Kenneth Dixon, the running back in Baltimore. Run over to your free agent list right now. Check out to see if any of them are available and try to make a spot on your roster. But don't go crazy. Don't drop Julio for Adam Humphries. We're not recommending that.
Sad we have to say that, but it's good. It's good to still say.
It's good to say. That is a public service announcement.
Could you imagine, like, a couple weeks from now, you get, like, a tweet from someone and be like, damn you, Anthony, I dropped Julio Jones for Adam Humphries. Now look, what have I done?
Hate DMs, hate tweets.
The hate mail is coming on Adam Humphries. It's coming in. Drop Julio. Dropping T.Y. Hilton. All right. Anyways, let's move on, guys. Week 4 action. Let's get into it. We have a lot of matchups written down here. Well, there's 4 of us, so we have 4 matchups. And a couple sneaky ones. I see you guys each have a sneaky one. I feel like there's no more left. You guys kind of covered the sneaky matchups of the week there, so I'll just kind of comment on what you have. But first, let's get into the best matchups of the week. Kev, you have the Saints and the Chargers, buddy. Both defenses not looking very good. Chargers just lost Manti Te'o. So who do you like in this Saints-Chargers matchup? Why is it one of the best matchups of the week?
I think you can make a case it's the best matchup of the week. But, that's basically just like last year where you just targeted anybody playing the Saints, and that holds true this year as well. But, right now the Saints are hurting with injuries right now. Kenny Vaccaro, Donnell Ellerby's out. I mean, they have quite a few injuries. Obviously, Willie Snead on the opposite side of the ball and their left tackle. So right now, like I said, I'm targeting everybody that's playing them. And Melvin Gordon, I think, is the best player to play off that entire offense this week from San Diego. Right now, he's RB7. I mean, he was a guy we loved into the offseason, heading into the season. He's averaging 64.6 rush yards a game on the ground with just over a touchdown and a quarter a game. So, and one thing the Saints do very well, and that's give up points on the ground, as we just saw against Atlanta. So far, they've given up 448 yards or 149 yards a game to go along with 2 touchdowns a game to the running back. So, I'm firing up Melvin Gordon everywhere, DFS season long. He's almost a top 5 play for me this week. So anybody that has Melvin Gordon, you're feeling great again this week. And then a guy, a flex option that I would be targeting is Tyrell Williams so far. The last 2 weeks with Keenan Allen out, he leads the team in targets more than Travis Benjamin. So I still think Travis Benjamin's still going to be a boom or bust type of play on a weekly basis. Just like I thought about him pretty much heading into the season. I don't think he's going to be a guy consistently that you can count on for solid fantasy production. It's not to say that he's not going to be productive, because I think he will, but I just don't think he's somebody on a consistent basis you can throw in your lineup and feel great about. But so far for Tyrell Williams, he's completed 9 of 14 targets, or he's hauled in 9 of 14, 130 yards and a touchdown. I like him this week going to get up against that Saints secondary. Like I mentioned, they're just decimated with injury. I think everybody from San Diego is worth a start. And then obviously with Drew Brees, I think you feel great about their entire offense. So for me, the only players you're going to avoid is not even players, it's the defenses, and that's it. You fire up everywhere else that you got along that's fantasy relevant across the board.
Look at that cop-out. He said avoid the defenses of the Chargers and Saints. Are they even owned anywhere? I'm going to look up the percentages.
Who else am I going to tell? Okay, Dontrell Inman. Avoid Dontrell Inman this week.
There you go. There's a name at least. Not a great name, but it's a name. You're right, though. The matchup is fantastic. I mean, two weak defenses and strong offenses, and we just saw how that turned out on Monday night. I scored 76 points with one team on Monday night, so hoping for a lot of the same from the Saints-Chargers game. That would be nice. Melvin Gordon. How about him, man?
Mm-hmm.
He's been great.
Yeah, I have shares of him. I like him.
Yeah, he's been fantastic. We got him so low. We were telling people, right? I mean, not to toot our own horns the whole show here, but we were telling people, Melvin Gordon.
Well, it definitely helps that Danny Woodhead went down, that's for sure.
It does, but he was doing well before Woodhead went down, wasn't he? Yeah. Man, good pick there. Tyrell Williams, too. Bit of a surprise this year. Never even heard of the guy before. Coming in, getting targeted the most by Rivers. You know he's good if Rivers is targeting him. How about this next matchup? London, Jen. You're going
London, baby. You get to wake up early or set your DVR and don't forget. It's, 9:30 a.m.?
A show during the game day show, which has just been absolutely terrible for us. In the past, when we've had a game during our game day podcast, we've had no viewership whatsoever. Everybody's watching the game, and we get distracted by the game too. It's ridiculous. But tell us about this game. Who do you like? Who are you avoiding?
Sure. AFC South rivalry, Colts. 1-2 Jags. Oh man, they look so bad this week. 0-3. So most of the time, I think it's going to be the Colts show. Well, basically, I think the top fantasy guy is going to be Andrew Luck. They're 6-2 record against the Jags, and the last time that the Jags won last year, they actually whooped them pretty bad. The Jags beat them 51-16, but Luck didn't play in that game, as you remember. He was injured and missed a lot last season. So. The Jags give up the 8th most fantasy points to the quarterback, so I think he's going to have a good game along with T.Y. Hilton. They do a little bit better with that as far as wide receivers go, but I think Hilton's pretty safe to play. You should definitely plug him in. The thing that actually the Jags are doing pretty well at is they give the 6th fewest points to the running backs, and so Frank Gore is somebody that I would avoid. And also on the other side, running backs, Yeldon, I'm telling you to avoid him just because I think we've seen him not really be able to do much. Now, on the other hand, and some people might argue with me, and who knows, you guys might be one of them, but I think a good flex play and somebody that I'm not saying isn't a risk, but that I know after coming back, Chris Ivory, he just did not look good this week. He missed 2 weeks with this mysterious illness. We don't know really what happened. He didn't look like himself. I think he bounces back this week. They give up the 2nd most fantasy points. The Colts do the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs. And so I think if you're going to invest in anybody on the Jags, it's going to be Chris Ivory for me. Of course, you want to play A-Rob. I mean, he's going to get the targets, but we've all seen the Jags struggle, their offensive line struggle. They can't protect Bortles, and so he's more of a, if you've got somebody better, I don't know if I'd feel awesome about starting Bortles this week. So those are kind of my big guys for that game, and I definitely think Andrew Luck's going to be a top play this week.
Those division matchups. Across the pond, too.
Any concern with Andrew Luck and that shoulder?
I was a little concerned last week. I'm not going to lie. But, I mean, he seemed to be doing fine. Did anybody see anything where they thought? Clearly Hilton had a huge game. He seemed to be able to deliver the ball just fine. He didn't get hit as often as we've seen him in the past get hit, so that was good. But I didn't see anything that would make me be concerned. I think what I'm more concerned about actually is just the jet lag, and that in the past these games that are over in London have been which team can adjust the best, and that's something that you just can't predict. So as far as we know and as much as we know and knowledge that we have, this is the way we think it's going to go, but it really could just depend on how they all adjust over there.
Well, I think we all thought that, like the Jaguars. I think we all thought Blake Bortles in general was going to regress a little bit, but I didn't think it was going to be to this level. I mean, he's been horrific so far. The throws he's making, it just doesn't make any sense. I'm like, who are you throwing to, buddy? And, Allen Robinson, thank God he had those 2 touchdowns because if it wasn't for that, he didn't do much else other than that. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely a concern, and their defense does not look like it's much more improved than what it was last season. So
and they've had injuries, too, on the defense. Bortles threw, 1 interception first week, 2 the second week, and then last week 3. He's just progressively looked not so hot. I saw him forcing it to Allen Robinson, and I think that's where he started to get a little bit in trouble. He can only make so many plays, and so I think he just tried to rely on him and force it a little bit too much.
They can continue to force to Allen Robinson. I'll be okay as a fantasy owner of Allen Robinson. They can just continue to do that.
Yeah. The offensive line couldn't protect him either in his defense. He just didn't get enough time. So.
Yeah, I expected a bit of a drop-off from Blake Bortles, but not nearly the drop-off that we've seen so far. It's been a little shocking to me. You're calling that Chris Ivory, too. I like me some Chris Ivory. I think he once he gets over the illness, gets back into the flow of the game, I think he'll be fine. It's got to be better than TJ Yeldon. Got to be.
And he's going to get the red zone carries, too. So if they get down there, would you hope they get something going on offense? Because the defense on both sides isn't like the strongest, that he's going to get those. So.
Jeff, I see here for your best matchup, which I'm not sure if you just had what Kevin or Jen stole, but you have Raiders versus Ravens. And you mentioned all the Ravens, similar to your fantasy football team named all the running backs. But that has no running backs, by the way. What was that?
That was my name last year. I think I changed it today, actually. But this isn't a sexy game by any means. I could totally see this one being just one of those tough, grinded out, messy games. I don't know why. Maybe it's just the 2 teams that we have here, but yeah, the Raiders just in general have looked on the defensive side of the ball, considering all the money that they spent to get, added Sean Smith, Bruce Irvin, just overall their defense was, I think the consensus was that they were going to be a vastly improved unit, and they haven't been. This past week, to start the season, the first 2 weeks, they just got totally annihilated, 7 touchdowns through the air, obviously against a couple really good quarterbacks in Breeze and Ryan, but I'm not buying into them stopping Tennessee. They were without Delaney Walker. They're Tennessee's a run-heavy team. Not a lot going there, as far as pass catchers go, outside of DeMarco Murray, at least last week. But I'd fire up all the Ravens. Not too into the running game that Kevin spoke of earlier, but yeah, fire up Joe Flacco this week because Oakland's given up the 3rd most fantasy points to QBs at 22.3 per game. So it's another nice matchup for Flacco, just like last week with spacing on who it was. Who did they get? Jacksonville. Yeah, sorry. And a considerable amount of yardage that they're giving up too. So when you look at their secondary, the Chiefs looked like they made the right call. Sean Smith hasn't been absolutely horrendous. He's still graded pretty highly. I don't know how much people really buy into the PFF grades and stuff, but he's not terribly, but he's been burned. He's a burnable corner at this point. And that leads me into who my flex play would be this week, and that's Mike Wallace. And I went back today and I watched every single target to Mike Wallace, and they're getting him involved. He just suits Joe Flacco's skill set perfectly. And just, when you look at their secondary, like I was speaking of, even their safeties are terrible as well. They have 2 of the lowest rated safeties in the league in Reggie Nelson and Keith McGill. So fire them up. I think Mike Wallace is a perfect flex play this week. especially considering that Oakland's given up league leads 16 plays so far of 20-plus yards or more, which is ridiculous through 3 games.
Insane.
So, yeah, I'm going to be starting him all over the place. He's playing the most of any Baltimore wide receiver right now. 70% of snaps, which, they're kind of rolling with a platoon at wide receiver right now. So, yeah, but they're working him in. And, everyone kind of thought Mike Wallace was dead after his last two stops, but he's revitalized in Baltimore. And then someone that I'm not starting, probably it's kind of, I'm going back and forth on this one because his involvement has increased every single week. I think TJ Hernandez was tweeting the involvement of Clive Walford, and then Seth Roberts has been getting phased out as well. So it's kind of, they're crossing paths, and Walford's getting more involved at this point. So, but Baltimore's been pretty stout against the tight end. They've given up a little bit of yardage, but nothing significant at all, and no touchdowns. And they've seen a decent tight end group so far in Clay, Barnage, and Julius Thomas. So nobody's eclipsed 40 yards on the year and no touchdowns. So I'm just not, I think that if they're going to get anything done in that offense, they're going to continue to pound away with the run game, and then obviously their duo at wide receiver there. So I'd just be fading Clive Walford because I think there's plenty of other tight end options this week.
Fair enough, man. Love the your piece there, Mike Wallace. I agree. The guy was written off by everybody this offseason, right? I mean, player to avoid. We may have even told you to avoid him at one point in time. I'm sure Kev did. I see you over there, Kev. But he's having a pretty decent season. He's a boomer bust play. He's always been a boomer bust play. Even, aside from maybe that 1 year in Pittsburgh, for the most of his career, he's been a boomer bust play. But great matchup against the Raiders. Joey Flacco getting it done this year.
He should be tied with Jordy Nelson right now, and with the league lead in touchdowns with 4. He dropped a nice ball by Flacco in the back right of the end zone. Totally burned his guy, but bloop, right through the hands. So I don't know. Mike Wallace is being overlooked similarly to Jamison Crowder. I don't know how owned he is, but I'd be firing him up.
Yeah, for sure. How about that, Jen, not to bring up a sore subject here, but did you guys see the play where Roethlisberger in the end zone puts it right in, I think it was Wheaton's numbers, right? But, to his defense, Wheaton did have a guy right in his face, but it was just unbelievable because there's this defender with his arms up, and the ball goes over the defender, down in front of him, and hits Wheaton right in the numbers. I was like, what a throw! Holy crap. He didn't catch it, unfortunately, but very impressive throw.
Yeah, it's not that Ben played amazing, clearly, but Wheaton played horribly and had a few key drops. He clearly, hasn't gotten the rust off from missing games. And for somebody that was, doing decently, I at least, expected a few key catches from him, and he just hurt us more than he helped us. So it was hard to watch.
I bet. Yeah, that's a tough score, tough game. For my matchup of the week, guys, I am sticking with the NFC South, and I'm going with the Panthers versus the Falcons in Atlanta. I think the Panthers defense hasn't been impressive as they have in years past, so this is going to open up some opportunities for that Falcons offense to actually continue to do work right now because they are just absolutely on fire. Remember last year they started 5-0. That was the thing. So hoping for them to keep it going. As a new Matt Ryan owner, I'd really look forward to that. But actually my top performer is going to be Kelvin Benjamin, and I have some logic behind this. I know he just had a goose egg. That's exactly why I think he's going to be a top performer, because the coach came out and he said that it was unacceptable that Benjamin had 0 receptions, and I think it was only a couple targets, and that was on him. He's going to do more to get him involved. Now, we've seen this a million times in the past, right? These guys always come out the following week and get targeted a buttload and get a ton of production, and maybe he'll go back to just doing nothing after this game, but I think in this particular game, they're going to make it a point to get Kelvin Benjamin the ball, which is why I chose him as the top performer. Not to mention Falcons defense, really not all that great, right? In the flex spot, I'm going with Tevin Coleman. May not seem like much of a flex play anymore. May seem like a RB1, RB2 at this point, but I'm sure there's still people, myself included, that have him there for a flex position. So I'm keeping him there. He's been the more productive back between him and Freeman, if that really matters, because they've both been very productive the past 2 games. And then player to avoid, Mohamed Sanu. Got hurt this past game. He's expected to be fine next week. I just think Carolina has a very good pass defense somehow. I mean, they completely new secondary. It's like all rookies or something like that. And they're just locking it down. They have allowed the fewest fantasy points to wide receivers this season. They held Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, and Stephon Diggs just this past week to less than 10 points. And that was PPR, so probably even less than 5 points in a standard league. I think Sanu is the guy to avoid. I would say Julio, but I can't tell you to avoid Julio. So I'm going to go with Sanu on this one.
What do you think of Cap? What do you think of Cameron Artis-Payne this week, Anthony? Because guess what? Atlanta just got slayed by Ingram. They gave up the 4th most fantasy points to running backs. He's actually in my undervalued article coming out, and I think he's going to have a hell of a game. What do you think?
I'm not a Cap fan, but I could definitely see that happening. The matchup is definitely there, and the opportunity will be there. What do you think of Whitaker, though? I mean, do you see Travaris Cadet out there for New Orleans?
Yes, I did
those
see him.
linebackers could not keep up with him at all.
I saw everybody but Cook, so I saw Cadet. I'm just concerned about the usage. You know, he did. Ron Rivera did what he said he was going to do and gave Cap the lead. Who knows if that could change this week? But from what I saw, they both could. I mean, Cadet and Ingram did well. So, they could be the next tandem that comes out, and with Jonathan Stewart out for at least another couple weeks, who knows? That this could be their week.
That's a good call out, though. Cameron Artis-Payne, right there. As Kev mentioned him last week, very similar runner to Jonathan Stewart. Powerful in between the tackles kind of runner. Good competition. Good competition. Good matchup this week against the Falcons. I think he should have a good week. So, guys, that's the best matchups of the week. How about some sneaky matchups? Maybe ones that people aren't really paying attention to, especially from a fantasy perspective. Kev, I see you have my Dolphins on here. So, okay, now I see why. All right. You want to talk about Jeremy Hill. I see. Okay. Go ahead.
Anthony, the fantasy gods have spoken, and they have given all of us Jeremy Hill supporters. I mean, who saw that performance coming against the Broncos, really? I mean, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns. Do not need I say more. And then this week on Thursday Night Football, they get to take on that Dolphins defense that has just been crushed by the running game. And so, I love that matchup. And to be honest, I think it's going to be interesting because it's like, okay, let me stop for a second.
Collect thoughts. Breathe.
Yes. So, on both sides of the football, when you look at the Bengals, they've been pretty decent against the run. They rank 15th in the league in terms of yards allowed, or 3.7 yards per carry average. But they've really hung their head on keeping running backs out of the end zone, as they have not allowed a single rushing touchdown on the year. And they've done a decent job in terms of against the pass as well. As they're 21st in the league in terms of yardage, but they have given up, I believe, 9 touchdowns through the air, which has been so it's kind of interesting, I think, this matchup, because the Dolphins clearly have no running game to speak of. For the most, unless you have faith in either Kenyon Drake or Jay Ajayi or Isaiah Pete or Damian Williams, or I don't know, is Ricky Williams still playing for them? It seems like they just fire everybody up and just give everybody a little bit of work. And, Roddy Brown, Daniel Thomas, but
Kareem.
Anyway. Yeah. But the Dolphins are going to have to pass the ball, and that's, it's going to be interesting to see that, because I think the Dolphins are going to be trying to throw the ball, and you're going to see the Bengals who are going to be trying to run. But the Dolphins defense. Can we just talk about this for a second? Because last week on game day, me and Anthony were talking about this game, about the Dolphins and Browns game, and I'm like, this should be a bloodbath. The Browns are completely decimated with injury. there's no way the Dolphins can lose this game, and there's no way this shouldn't even be close, right, Anthony? And Anthony was like, no, it's my Dolphins. There's certainly a chance it could happen. And this entire game, I'm like, is this happening? Are the Browns, who are led by Cody Kessler and freaking Terrell Pryor circling, trading off drives, are they really going to lose to the Browns? And it almost happened. Somehow you guys pulled it out. But I don't know, like, what's going on there in Miami. But I think this is going to be a game where Cincinnati gets going. I like Andy Dalton in this matchup. I like A.J. Green, obviously. And I think you feel great about starting Jeremy Hill, as last week you probably didn't. And then I think Gio Bernard kind of gets back on track as well this week. So I love all Cincinnati. I don't know. I probably wouldn't. I don't think I would mess around too much with Ryan Tannehill, but obviously I think Jarvis Landry. Devonta Parker continues to look good through 2 weeks. I think he's been very interesting and certainly deserves some wide receiver 4, flex option appeal. So I don't know, but I do know this: Jeremy Hill is the bee's knees, if you will.
What now? Explain something to me. Why don't you want any pieces of Ryan Tannehill against a team that gives up the third most fantasy points and just gave up 4 touchdowns to Trevor Siemian last week? Why would you not fire up Tannehill this week?
Because it's the Dolphins.
I think something that we need to dial back to is just we're still young in the season, so some of this stuff is partially skewed. Just in terms of a team might play. What we see. Like the one I was speaking of earlier, the Raiders. Maybe they did turn it around. They had a solid week this past week and got totally torched in week 2. So I don't know. I just think that.
I think you're right, Jeff. Overall, I think you're wrong about this because it's not an outlier. Fitz scored 20 fantasy points the first week. Ben scored 27 the second week. Siemian scored 36 this past week. It's not an outlier. They didn't tank. Cincinnati has not been able to hold quarterbacks. But I agree with you that some of it is skewed by some recent and or past stuff, and you have to kind of look at the week to week. I don't think that's the case this week.
I guess in a week where there's not a ton of great matchups to exploit, especially for the lower end guys, maybe Dak Prescott deserves a look, or some of those guys. But I think Ryan Tannehill can be serviceable, especially, if you're an Aaron Rodgers or, I guess you're probably not, you weren't started throwing out Carson Wentz. So really there's only one guy, or maybe a Russell Wilson owner who, is a little worried about the injury that he has there. So maybe Ryan Tannehill would be a serviceable guy. But I do know this. The one thing I hate about Thursday night is we never know what the hell to expect. I hate targeting guys on Thursday night because it's just anything you might think could happen usually doesn't happen. So I don't know. Short rest, everything else. So for me, like I said, Tannehill's risky, but I see the upside there, and I do understand where why you would want to and why would make sense, I guess.
I think people are looking at the interceptions that they've seen from Tannehill the past 2 games, and they're forgetting that he's thrown for over 300 yards, almost 400 yards versus New England because they come from behind, because they are the Dolphins, and their running game is shit, and so they fall behind and then they start throwing, which could be the case with Cincinnati. So I agree. Thursday night could be, who knows, a flub. But for people that are looking for streamers, and if Tannehill, he's owned in 44% of leagues, so he's still out there on, in half leagues. So if you're looking at some of the matchups, I think he's one that might have some upside for you.
Any given Sunday. I bet you the Finns play up to the Bengals this Thursday. This is how it works. This is how they are. They're the most frustrating team in football. Anyways, speaking of the team they played last week, they played the Browns, almost lost. Terrell Pryor was awesome. And now Jeff is picking them as a sneaky matchup against the Redskins in Washington. What do you like about this matchup, Jeff?
There's not a ton to like, really. I think there's a lot of what's going to go down here is going to be dependent on kind of the game script. And we've seen Isaiah Crowell look really good so far through the first 3 weeks. And he's got a good matchup in terms of how terrible Washington's looked against the run. They've given up 6 touchdowns on the ground so far to each of the first 3 weeks. So this isn't like a one-game explosion type thing here. But so much of it depends on whether or not Washington can convert in the red zone. They've been terrible in the red zone so far. Kirk Cousins last year was, he 22 touchdowns to 0 interceptions in the red zone. This year, he's got one of the lowest completion percentages in the league, even though they're there almost more than anybody. So if he turns that around and they get up early on Cleveland, then it's going to be trouble for Crowell because he doesn't play on third down, long situations. Then it would turn more into a Duke game. So it just sucks for Crowell owners because I think that Cleveland's defense won't really be able to keep up. But if you're stressing at running back and Cleveland can keep the game close, Crowell's been looking really good. Really, really good so far. It's an RB1 up to this point. And, the Cleveland running game in general has been looking really good. So we'll see. But obviously I've already talked about him a little bit, but that was Jamison Crowder. I think that he's a great play this week, considering that secondary is just kind of shaky outside of Joe Hayden. So I'm going to keep riding the Crowder train there.
Good call out, man. It's the Crowell, Duke Johnson, and Terrell Pryor show there in Cleveland. They're coming close. They could win one. Maybe it's this one. Redskins haven't looked that great. Jamison Crowder, great matchup there. Pretty much every Redskin, I think, in all seriousness. I know we said that about the Dolphins last week. And look, Devontae Parker, Jarvis Landry both scored a touchdown. So moving on, we have one last matchup to go over. Oh, boy, this is going to be an interesting weekend. Jen and Kevin likely not going to talk at all on Sunday because the Chiefs are going over to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers, coming off an embarrassing loss to the Philadelphia Eagles. They're going to bounce back. Jen, who do you like in this one?
I think it might be closer than I want to admit. Of course, I'm going to pick my Steelers. I think it's going to be a game with a lot of running that I think both teams might have more difficulty. I think Ben's going to have a tough game. They give up, last week they got 6 interceptions. I'm not comparing Fitztragic to Ben. I think Ben is going to do better, but they've only given up 1 touchdown to each of Rivers. They played Rivers and Osweiler. I mean, they've been pretty tough on quarterbacks, but they've had a easier time with running backs. And I don't really think, and this is, I think, one of those times, Jeff, that you can't really look at, how some of the running, like last week, of course, Forte and Bill O'Powell didn't get many fantasy points and it skewed this. I think Bell coming back, I think he's going to do well. And I think they're going to give him the ball and see what he can do. But I'm a little bit worried about Ben and interceptions. Kansas City's defense has really come on. And Pittsburgh gives up a lot of points. And so I think this is kind of the where game. They're saying Jamal Charles might come back, but he's going to be limited. They have a bye week next week. Maybe they'll let him in there. We'll see if he's at practice, with the first team this week. But they're not going to give him a lot of carries. And I could see Ware kind of running away with this. So I think it's going to be close. I'm going to go with my Steelers a little bit over it, but I could see this being a close game. And Kevin, feel free to jump in. But I personally, as far as people to watch, I wouldn't play Alex Smith. I don't think he's looked very good. I don't think he's been throwing many touchdowns. Macklin hasn't been doing well. I mean, he averages 6 yards per throw. He's not getting it down the field. I think they're going to give it to the running backs and let that go. But Kevin clearly might have some different insights.
No, I completely agree. I mean, I think the Chiefs have a real shot at getting their ass kicked in this game, to be honest with you.
Holy crap, I did not expect that. Who's on the other side of the computer right now?
Well, it depends on who shows up. The Steelers from last week show up. They're going to get their asses kicked.
Let's be honest, okay? Ryan Fitzpatrick's a terrible quarterback. I've said that since the beginning. I said that early in the offseason. If you guys remember, I said I would start Geno Smith over Ryan Fitzpatrick. So this doesn't really surprise me that with Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's not a good quarterback. The 6 interceptions was fluky. The Chiefs' offense was terrible. I mean, everyone talked about the 6 interceptions, but nobody talked about the fact that the Chiefs' offense only scored 7 points. off of 8 turnovers. I mean, that is a huge issue. Yes, 2 of them, one was by the special teams, one was by the defense on a pick 6, where clearly half their team didn't even want to tackle Derek Johnson running down the field. They're like, no, we're good. You go. You have it. And but, no, I am worried about this. The Pittsburgh Steelers have one of the best offenses in the league. Their running game, whether it's Le'Veon Bell or DeAngelo Williams, I don't think it really matters. DeAngelo Williams has been a beast this entire year. So, I mean, who's ever back behind there doesn't really matter. I mean, Le'Veon Bell coming back isn't like, oh, man, this is even worse. I just think it is what it is. The Chiefs' defense has looked better the last 2 weeks, but we have to keep in mind, like I said, that's against 2 quarterbacks who, one, Brock Osweiler, who's been awful in his own right, and then another, which is Ryan Fitzpatrick, which, like I said, isn't really – I mean, it's in Arrowhead. Arrowhead is one of the toughest places to play. And so, like, that didn't really surprise me. Like you mentioned, Jen, the Chiefs' offense has been awful. Jeremy Maclin, awful. He's been about as efficient, like we mentioned. He's getting some of that Devonta Adams, inefficiency going. Just can't seem to get anything going. Their running game has really bailed them out. Spencer Ware. I do think Jamal Charles will be back this week. I do believe that. Like I mentioned with Jamal Charles so many times, he's not a guy that needs a ton of workload. If he gets 10 to 12 touches, he can produce RB1 numbers. That's the type of player he is. I think they've been careful with him. With Spencer Ware, as good as he looked, they have no need to rush him back whatsoever. This seems like a good time to do that. But with this game being in Pittsburgh, this doesn't look good for Kansas City. They have no pass rush. They didn't have any pass rush last week. And Marcus Peters, if he's probably going to get roasted by Antonio Brown, because Marcus Peters is very boom or bust. Marcus Peters is a ball hawk. Every play he's going for the interception. If he doesn't get it, he gets roasted. That's why he gives up so many yards, so many touchdowns to wide receivers. He really needs to figure that out. If Antonio Brown gets in his head, it's going to be a long day for Kansas City. Their number 2 corner is not any good. Like I said, they've been more of a product of the matchup and who they were actually playing versus what it was. Yes, Pittsburgh looked bad last week, but the Chiefs' defense is not Philadelphia's. Let me put it that way. So don't get sucked in by Kansas City's defense and thinking they're as good as what they were. They still have the same problems. The Chiefs literally still could have lost that game because the offense could do nothing. So unless the Chiefs' offense gets going, which if we see the Chiefs' offense that we saw in the second half of San Diego, because that's the only time we've seen the Chiefs' offense do anything so far. So, like you mentioned, it's all Antonio Brown, Big Ben, Le'Veon Bell, DeAngelo Williams. I don't know if I play DeAngelo Williams now. I don't want to see how that shakes out. But Spencer Ware would be fine. I think you have to start Jeremy Maclin and obviously Travis Kelce, but that's pretty much probably the list. I'm still firing up Jamal Charles as well because I think if he plays, and I think even with, like I said, unlimited touches, he can still produce big-time numbers.
Do you really think as careful as they've been, though, like 1 week out from bye, that they'll put him in? I mean, I know it's their running defense isn't that good, and so they could think, okay, let's get some rust off, but you really think they're going to put him in that much when they're this close and they've held him out this long? I mean, he's been with the practice squad.
If he's ready to go, he's ready to go. They said last week that he's been chomping at the bit, ready to come back. There was reports last week that he wanted to play, and the Chiefs just held him back. So I think he's ready. And like I said, from what it sounds to like this week, Andy Reid sounded the most optimistic about Jamal Charles this week that I've heard all year from him. And so I do think he's back. I think he returns this week. And like I mentioned, I do think it's going to be somewhat of a limited there was reports out there by Adam Teicher, who's a Kansas City Chiefs beat writer, saying that even when he does come back, he's not going to be thrusted straight into the feature role. But like I mentioned, he's not a guy that needs that. Like I said, 10 to 12 touches, he's good. Throughout his career, I've said this multiple times, in a PPR format, when he gets at least 10 carries, he averages 20 PPR fantasy points a game. So I think that's ultra efficient. So he just doesn't need that kind of workload.
Wow, the return of Le'Veon Bell and Jamal Charles in the same week. It's like fantasy football paradise in the same game, no less. That should be interesting to watch. Very curious to see Bell and Charles get their first action of the year. Very fun players to watch. Very awesome talents. I can't wait for that one. All right, guys, it looks like that's about all we have here for week 4. Any other last comments before we let our listeners go?
No, just be sure to come over to the website. We've got tons of weekly content that comes out to help you on waivers, to help you with your lineups, to help you with trades. So just be aware and come to the website and read up.
The website is thefantasyauthority.com. Like Jen mentioned, if you liked what you heard today, go on over to thefantasyauthority.com. Check it out. We have articles releasing every single day throughout the fantasy season. So if you can't find the information on our site, you can't find it anywhere. Guys, this has been another edition of the Fantasy Authority Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to give us some love on Twitter at FF_authority or shoot us a like, subscribe, rate, review on iTunes, on Stitcher, on your podcast playing device of choice. We really appreciate that. And make sure to check us out on Sunday for lineup advice on our TFA Game Day show. We may not be able to help you out with the Colts Jaguars. It will already be in progress when we go live at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. For Jeff Donovan, Kevin Steele, and Jennifer Smith, I'm Anthony Pinzone. This has been another edition of the Fantasy Authority Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and have an awesome night, everyone. All right, we did have some questions from the YouTube community here as we streamed live. I wanted to close out the show before we got to them, though. So Philip Studer asked, who do you guys have number one in the power rankings? Or who do you think should be number one in the power rankings? We actually don't do power rankings, so we don't have anybody there. But who do you think should be at the top spot?
I don't know how you don't say Minnesota at this point, to be honest with you.
In the power rankings?
Yeah, I said the Patriots.
Dude, it's the Patriots, hands down. When Brady comes back, it's not even going to be a contest.
Can we? I know we didn't talk about this. It's not the podcast anymore, but can we have a conversation about this? How much do you think that it's the system versus Tom Brady? Now again, let me preface that saying I'm not saying that I think Tom Brady, like you could, that Tom Brady's not an elite level quarterback. What I'm saying is though, it is. If you take a look, I mean, Matt Castle went 11-5. Without that, when Tom Brady went down with injury with ACL, and then now look at him like. You start. I mean, I guess it creeps into your mind. How much is it Tom Brady, and how much is it Bill Belichick?
I think it's definitely a combination. I mean, the only reason why this is such a huge deal right now is because they've won 3 games with, basically nothing. I mean, the Matt Castle thing, that was so long ago, like, that's out of my mind. I just think that for me, the Patriots, it's the fact that they, on the defensive side of the ball, it seems like they do stuff with cast-offs and, like, just guys come out of nowhere all the time, and their defense produces consistently. Their defense is never terrible. They're mediocre at worst, and they can I don't know, like it's crazy.
And I totally like I would say probably for me, if it was me, I would say the Patriots are number 2. But they have, I mean, Arizona looks awful right now, just awful. So that win, I don't know. The teams that they've beaten like doesn't like strike fear into you, like, oh man, like they've beaten some really good football teams, like they really haven't. Like, again, I'm not taking anything away from them because what they've done with backup quarterbacks has been pretty impressive. But Minnesota has beaten the team that was in the Super Bowl last year in Carolina and beat them, made them look pretty bad. They beat Green Bay, made them look pretty bad. And so, like, I don't know. Like, it's hard for me not to give it to Minnesota. I think Minnesota right now has the best defense in the league, and their offense, I think, is going to get better. And this is all while losing, the top 5 running back in the league and a player that they've actually leaned upon heavily throughout his career to, on offense. So I don't know. For me, I have a hard time not putting Minnesota in there, especially as the body of work what they've been able to do. They're also had Sam Bradford coming in on short rest. They've lost Adrian Peterson. So I mean, they've had their own injuries in their own right. I mean, they're starting left tackle Khalil, he's out. So it's hard for me not to give it to the Vikings at this point.
Fair enough. One other one before I get going and edit this darn thing. Spencer Ware or Mark Ingram this week?
Wait, Saints are. What are you talking about? San Diego?
Yeah.
Ingram. Ingram?
I like Ingram as well.
Man, that's tough. He's getting freaking vultured left and right. So I'm probably going Ingram too.
They're going to cut out a lot of throws, but.
I'd probably go Ingram too because at some point he's just gonna go off, and this could be the week.
Yeah, San Diego's defense pretty bad. Lost Teo. I like it. Ingram.
It ultimately depends on, for me, I think it ultimately is going to depend on if Jamal Charles plays or not. Which obviously you're not probably going to have I think we'll know before Sunday night if Jamal Charles is going to play. If he plays, then it's certainly Ingram. If not, you could. If he doesn't play, you could certainly make a case for Spencer Ware. But because I think I would have him as probably a top 6 or 7 running back if that happens. And that's Spencer Ware. So, but right now I would say Ingram.
All right, sweet. That was it. Andrew Hankins joined us after we told him to sit Emmanuel Sanders on Sunday. He said he had Sanders on his bench. Our bad.
Who was the other option?
We told him to play Enunwa, I think. It was Enunwa, Sanders, and one other person. I think we said Enunwa.
No.
Wasn't that with Brandon Mark? Was it? I think it was. I need to go back and listen. I need to listen to the tape.
Yeah. I don't remember. I don't remember who his other options were. Wait, it was in my league. Let me just look. Hold on. Hold on. Where is he? The cake is a lie. Here we go. Shane Vereen was the other option. You said Vereen. You said Vereen. You're right. You said Vereen.
He did okay before he got injured, didn't he?
He had 11 points in our league before he got injured. I said Enunwa, and neither of us said Sanders. You had the better option, though, because Enunwa only scored 7. And Vereen scored 14 and a half, actually, Vereen scored.
Yeah. So he did okay.
Yep, he did good.
Okay.
He won anyways. What the hell's he bitching about? He won handily. He won 151 to 108.
People want to bitch.
Stop hating, AJ. Stop hating. All right,
That's
guys.
like the guy. What was it? Well, doesn't matter.
Thanks for joining us on YouTube, everybody. It's been a lot of fun. And Kevin, Jen, Jeff, have a good night. I'm going to go try to get this thing edited before I go to bed.
Sweet deal.
All right.
Later, guys.
Sweet. Bye.
Later. Bye. Don't look so sad, Kev. Bye.